Welcome to Voices of the Community, which explores critical issues facing Northern California communities. We introduce you to the voices of community thought leaders and change makers who are working on solutions that face our fellow individual community members, neighborhoods, cities, and our region. This is George Koster, your host. This episode is part of our series exploring COVID-19's impact on nonprofits and small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area. Back in April of 2020, when we decided to create this ongoing series on COVID-19's impact, first on nonprofits and then on small businesses in the San Francisco Bay Area, we, like you, had no idea how long the pandemic would go on and what the health and economic impact would be in our community. With vaccinations increasing, COVID-19 cases and deaths decreasing, we're now moving into the summer of 2021 with the reopening of the economy and all of the uncertainty of our ever-changing indoor and outdoor, vaccinated and unvaccinated protocols, and the politics that will drive how we all come back together as a unified or fractured community. We will continue to shine a spotlight on the nonprofits and small businesses that make up the fabric of our community, along with the founders and staff who are struggling to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their operations, services, and sustainability until we can all get to the other side of the pandemic. Along the way, we will also share with you all the amazing solutions that our nonprofits, small businesses, foundations, and government leaders are working on to help us all get to the other side of the pandemic and come together to rebuild our communities with more economic, social, and environmental equality.
There have just been so many ways that Youth Spirit Artworks has impacted the lives of young people. And I think one of the important ways beyond job placement, beyond vocational success, is actually that we serve as a community for a lot of youth that are struggling with poverty and struggling with being unsheltered. And so we're able to really, for youth that are in some pretty tough situations with family and lack of family, as the case may be, really can serve as a real community and a real family for a lot of young people.
Our featured voices in this episode are the Executive Director of Youth Spirit Artworks, Sally Heineman, and the Social Media Manager, Reginald Gentry. We wanted to host Youth Spirits Artworks on the show because they have developed both the first tiny homes village for unhoused youth in the East Bay, along with using arts and journalism skills training to provide pathways for our youth to share their voices and experiences to our region. I'm joined remotely by the Executive Director of the Youth Spirits Artworks program, Sally Heineman, and the Social Media Manager, Reginald Gentry. Welcome to Voices of the Community, Sally and Reginald.
Thank you
for having us.
Sally, please provide our audience an overview of Youth Spirits Artworks and your programs.
Youth Spirit Artworks is an almost 15-year-old nonprofit organization that was founded in order to respond to the really quite dire need for job training and jobs opportunities for underserved and unsheltered young people ages 16 to 24. And so we carry out our work through 4 different program areas. We train youth along 8 vocational pathways, and everything that we do is anchored in art as a vehicle for empowerment and transformation in the lives of young people. We see art as a means of really teaching youth about jobs readiness, about working as part of a team, about working hard, about reaching goals, just many things that can be done through art. But art is only one of the areas that we train people in, and that area is commercial art, in fact. So Youth Spirit provides wraparound services for the young people involved in our program. We involve as many as 150 young people a year in our core jobs training program. We also have a wellness area where youth get therapy and other kinds of supports to move ahead with their lives. We involve youth really actively in getting scholarships and with academic support. One of our training areas is sales and entrepreneurship. So youth are involved in art sales, exhibits, and events through our organization, which is super interesting and exciting. We train youth in community organizing. So we have as many as 50 youth a year that are involved in attending meetings and being part of the community organizing campaigns that Youth Spirit leads. And as a strongly youth-led organization, youth choose the campaigns that we're involved with. And one of the program areas that we've created is called Housing and tiny house villages because our youth participants and leaders created a 100 Homes for Homeless Youth campaign where they're actually building tiny house villages around the East Bay. And then we also have a program area called Voices of Power. And in Voices of Power, youth are involved in writing poetry, doing journalism, other kinds of communication. They run the homeless newspaper, Street Spirit, that is our 25-year-old newspaper that has over 80 homeless street vendors. So they're super involved in making their voices heard through our homeless newspaper. So those are some of the areas that we work in. And we've just grown a lot through our 100 Homes for Homeless Youth campaign and creation of our first tiny house village. And so we're really ramped up to a whole new level in the last 2 years.
Thank you. It was a good overview, Sally. And Reginald, I'm going to turn to you and have you provide a little bit more detailed information on some of the programs.
So involving the job training that we give our youth, we also provide them with art training and leadership training, soft skill building and hard skill building. Myself, I am in the social media and journalism vocational pathway because all of our youth in the program are trained along 7 plus vocational pathways. Mine is social media and journalism, so that when I am going through all my months and semesters through ISA, I'm actually working towards a goal and I'm not just being static and just being a part of the organization. There's a progression ladder involved in the youth program in which youth complete a certain set of requirements on each step of that progression ladder. And the last step on the progression ladder is job placement. The second to last step on the progression ladder is being a youth leader, which is a position in our youth program that I am as the social media manager position. That's a youth leader position. So sometimes I tell people I'm the social media leader, but for those who have not been told the spiel on why I say in the youth program, I just tell them that I'm the social media manager. But there's a lot of training we do. It's not just art training. It's not just job training, but it's leadership training and skill building, learning how to be more of an asset and professional.
Thank you. It was some really great details and gets back to Sally's point about wraparound programs. Sally, could you please tell us how has COVID-19 impacted Youth Spirit Artworks and how are you and the team been dealing with it over this last 15 months?
Of course, the pandemic has been very tough for so many organizations and for all of us, just extremely challenging. But we have been really blessed at Youth Spirit Artworks in the sense that we were able to really ramp up during the pandemic and keep all of our programs open. We managed to get our core jobs training program on Zoom within around 3 days. And so all of our participants were using Zoom. And then we were able to continue the building of our first tiny house village. And we ended up involving over 2,000 volunteers from 45 congregations in our project during COVID without anybody actually getting the virus. So we were able to open our tiny house village, our first tiny house village during the pandemic, and have 26 young people move in off the street and into housing. 22 youth and 4 resident assistants moved in. We've just been very fortunate. Other agencies have been just devastated, but we've managed to keep ourselves afloat. We also, with our Street Spirit newspaper, our editor-in-chief made a huge effort and was able to raise $45,000 from donors to be able to keep our Street Spirit vendors working and getting an income during the 3 months that they had to take off. So we were able to give the vendors stipends during that time. And then we were in July able to resume sales of the newspaper on the street. So we've just been very fortunate and feel grateful for our ability to be able to pull that off.
Thank you. And Reginald, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your work there?
For me, it's only impacted it in the means of me getting content to post to our social media. But with the assembly of a social media team just some months ago, earlier this year, it's been easier for me to get that content because those participants have actually been in studio while I've been working from home. We've also been sharing a Google Photos album in which they share the photos or whatever content with me so I can take that and make captions with it and post that. Versus when it used to be prior to COVID, I would be in the studio just like everybody else and get the pictures myself of whatever content, whether it be people's art pieces or meetings we were having, whatever have you. So it's only affected it in that means, just content that I can get. But other than that, with us using Zoom, as Sally mentioned, and we've also been using Slack as a means of communication, it's been pretty fine. We haven't really been affected all that much. We've also obviously been following all the CDC safety precautions. So masks on, hand sanitizer on site at all times, 6 feet apart, everything that we can possibly do to keep everybody as safe as possible. Because we're really passionate about having people as comfortable as they can possibly be, even before COVID, just emotionally, mentally, physically, everything.
Thank you. And Sally, turning back to you, what do you feel has been the biggest impact on our artists and creative economy and our unhoused youth over these years from your work at Youth Spirit Artworks?
Oh my gosh. We've worked with hundreds of East Bay youth in the last 15 years, and there have just been so many ways that Youth Spirit Artworks has impacted the lives of young people. And I think one of the important ways beyond job placement, beyond vocational success, is actually that we serve as a community for a lot of youth that are struggling with poverty and struggling with being unsheltered. And so we're able to really, for youth that are in some pretty tough situations with family and lack of family, as the case may be, really can serve as a real community and a real family for a lot of young people. So that's something wonderful. But as we've been talking about, youth are getting skilled in 8 different areas that are super important for them in terms of college, in terms of their jobs. And particularly, I have to say, for all the youth that were involved in our creating this tiny house village, they've gotten a lot from being able to just put on their resume that they helped create the first youth tiny house village in the United States. That was a youth initiated and led project. And they went to literally hundreds and hundreds of meetings towards reaching their goal and then met their goal. So it's just quite extraordinary. So yeah, youth learn so much. They learn about their own voice and their own sense of empowerment. They can get out of a place of despair and really be able to have agency out in the world. So we feel very fortunate to be able to facilitate that and really value that greatly.
Thank you. And Rachel, I'm going to turn back to you and have you retell your favorite story.
Yeah, I've had a lot of good memories and some good stories at YSA with being a part of YSA for almost 6 years now. Come late August, it'll be 6 years. But I would say in more recent memory, at least I can remember, my favorite story / memory at YSA is definitely the grand opening of our Tiny House Empowerment Village early April this year. Just seeing people in person again, and safety precautions were still being held. Of course, people were apart, masks on, and etc. But just seeing people in person again and hearing people speak on the microphone on the little stage we had set up in front of everybody, people speaking from the heart. Some people had things written down, but it was just a really passionate event with a lot to look forward to for the youth residents who currently live there and for the youth residents who are going to live there once the current youth move on. And it was also a culmination of so much hard work that we've put in, that thousands of people actually put in over the last 5 years of the project being in development. It was so many feelings like at one time. It's hard to actually put in words, to be honest, but it was like a culmination of so much hard work and heartwarming. All the color that was surrounding so many beautiful people, all the color from the prayers and blessings mural fence that we have, the tiny house murals. It was just a sight to see, really. It's hard to put into words, to be honest.
Thank you. And Sally, turning to you, same question. Over your time of working there, could you share one of your favorite stories of working at Youth Spirit Artworks?
I think that youth attending meetings with city council people and city officials has been very moving to be a part of. And we don't discriminate. We involve a lot of different youth in what we're doing, and different groupings of youth go to different meetings. But I mean, overall, I've just been blown away listening to youth talk about their experience and really talking from the heart at these community meetings. It's just been amazing. And I've seen youth stay out until 11:30 at night in order to make their voices heard around an issue that they care about. We had to work just extremely hard to get the money for our tiny house village, and our youth they just knocked themselves out in order to get that village running. And so that, to me, that was just super, super inspiring. Yeah. And I have to say, with our homeless newspaper, youth are doing artwork for it. They're writing feature articles. They're taking photos, and the material that they include in Street Spirit, that they submit and have in Street Spirit, is very, very powerful. In fact, the August issue of Street Spirit is about to come out, and one of our leaders, Inti Gonzalez, has some artwork in the current just about to come out issue, and it is just beautiful. So yeah, I encourage everybody to take a look at the August issue of Street Spirit.
And staying with Street Spirit for a second. So folks who are listening to this, especially in the East Bay, how can they pick up a copy?
As I was mentioning, we have as many as 80 vendors in the East Bay, and Street Spirit is sold both in Berkeley and in Oakland on the street. So there's just a whole variety of different venues, locations where it's sold. Most of the grocery stores in town, there's vendors that sell Street Spirit Spirit in front of or right near the grocery store. And also other coffee shops, outside of coffee shops is a good place to get it, like outside of Pete's Coffee, someplace like that. But there's as many as 40 different places around the East Bay where vendors are selling Street Spirit.
And can someone read Street Spirit online?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yes, yeah, there's a website. It's thestreetspirit.org.
And so they can read there. They can also can they become a subscriber, make a donation?
They can, yes. And they can also donate via our website at uspiritartworks.org. So www.uspiritartworks.org.
And staying with the same idea of how folks can get engaged in your work. So could you walk the audience through some of the ways? Volunteer, obviously donate. How else?
Well, one of the things that we're doing right now is setting up a mentor program for all the youth that are involved in Youth Spirit Artworks. And so people that are interested in being mentors with youth can email Jilly, Jilly, at youthspiritartworks.org. And also just really actively right now, we are still building 8 more structures out at our tiny house village. It's at 633C Hagenberger. And on Saturdays from 9:30 in the morning until 4, every Saturday of the summer, we're volunteering. And so right now they're finishing a straw bale, completely amazing welcome center for the village. We're also going to be building 2 more tiny houses for live work staff. And so there's we're opening a medical clinic. So we're putting the finishing touches on the medical clinic building. So there's a lot of different ways for people to get involved. But especially if they want to volunteer on a Saturday, we would be just simply delighted to have them join us volunteering at 633C Hagenberger. And if they want to email me, also I'm Sally at uspiritartworks.org, and I can answer any questions that folks might have.
And so can folks go to your website to sign up to volunteer and then obviously make donations?
Yes, they can. Yeah. www.uspiritartworks.org.
Great. And so final question for our interview today. I'm going to start with you, Reginald. And that is, what are some of the positive things that you could see coming out of the pandemic to support your work there and the overall kind of creative economy, if you will, in Berkeley and Oakland?
I would say it's definitely, I think this has been the case for, I would dare say, most people. Ever since COVID's been a thing, it's really reminded people that you can't take your safety or health for granted. You really got to be serious about it. Sanitization, being organized, clean, everything. And that's also been the case for a lot of our youth artists who may be around other youth in the community. And everybody doesn't have the same safety, health, and hygiene standards that you might have. So with that being said, you have to be that much more careful when you're doing artwork, collaborative work in general, especially artwork around people in close quarters. So I think it would help us in that sense it's helped us in that sense just to remind us, you have to be safe, you have to be on your P's and Q's, and it'll help us get our work done. And I think it'll also help us be more comfortable when doing it.
And Sally, what do you feel are some of the positive things that could come out of the pandemic to support the Youth Spirits artwork?
Well, I think one of the things that we're all very excited about is that we've really built a lot of momentum through constructing the tiny house village. And I think all the volunteers were very revved up by their accomplishment, the youth and the volunteers. So we're actually pursuing 2 or even as many as 3 more villages and working really hard in our weekly meetings to talk about next steps for this 100 Homes for Homeless Youth campaign. So I think in our case, I feel like we're coming out of the pandemic with this momentum and excitement about the possibility of tiny house villages as a solution to the challenges of homelessness and for what they offer youth that really need affordable housing.
Thank you. All right. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to cover? Any special projects that you're raising funds for, Sally, or anything that you're working on, Reginald?
Well, I would like to add one more thing onto your previous question about ways in which we can benefit post-pandemic or during it right now. I think another benefit is for a number of people that have helped us with the Tiny House Empowerment Village project or just with YSA in however way. I believe that a lot of them were driven out to help us because of them being anxious to get out from being locked in the house from COVID. People just felt anxious to get out and do something productive instead of being in the house so often every day, quarantining or just being safe. So I think it's driven more collaboration and more assistance to whatever we need assistance and collaboration with.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And just want to just even elaborate on that, which is that I think that one of the most amazing things about our project is that when this project was going on during the Trump administration and during COVID, and as Reggie was getting at, it was really a means of people really expressing hope and kind of keeping hope alive at a time when they were feeling so much despair and hopelessness. And people just rolled up their sleeves and just came out to do something to create justice, to put positive spirit out, even though times were just so tough the last year and a half. And so that's just been very moving to be able to see. And it was particularly just amazing to see the way that the religious community did that, and just the deep involvement of the whole East Bay interfaith religious community in our project, from Muslim congregations to the whole Jewish community. Practically every Jewish congregation in the East Bay was involved, the Quakers, all these different, and it was just utterly wonderful for all of us to see that love in action, love for justice in action.
Thank you, Sally and Reginald, for sharing the wonderful insights from your work at Youth Spirit Artworks within the Berkeley and Oakland communities. We'll make sure that our listeners have your contact information, website, and social media, along with links to all the great arts, skills training programs, and the Tiny House Village project so that folks can get engaged with Youth Spirit Artworks and support your work. Please stay safe and healthy as we all work our way through this strange new pseudo-normalcy.
Thanks so much, George.
It was a pleasure, George. Thank you for having us.
That's it for this episode of Voices of the Community. You've been listening to the voices of the Executive Director of Youth Spirit Artworks, Sally Heineman, and the Social Media Manager, Reginald Gentry. To find out more about the Youth Spirit Artworks Arts and Journalism Skills Training Program, their tiny home village, and how to volunteer and donate, please go to youthspiritartworks.org. To find out more about other nonprofits supporting our artist community members, please listen to our interview with Susan Mernitz, along with Janet Hayes at The Crucible in episode 31, and Justin Hoover and Kareem Zelenka at Project Artivism in episode 49. We really want to hear from you in our short listener survey, so please go to georgecoster.com and click on the survey button on the upper right-hand side of the homepage and provide us your feedback and insights. Please tune in to KSFP 102.5 FM to next week's 1-hour special show on August 26th from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. from our live virtual panel show, which features voices from Word for Word, Simply the Basics, Children's Book Project, Lava May X, and the San Francisco Girls Chorus. We hope that you enjoyed the insights, points of view, and personal stories from the voices of changemakers and their nonprofits and small businesses featured in this series. To find out more and get engaged with the nonprofits, small businesses, and staff members featured in the series, please go to my website, georgecoster.com, and click on Voices of the Community to find links to the extended versions of these interviews and to listen to the entire series. After listening to these stories, we hope that you will consider making a donation and volunteering to provide a hand up to your fellow community members. I want to thank my associate producer, Eric Estrada, and Casey Nance at Citron Studios, along with the wonderful crew at the San Francisco Public Press and KSFP. Voices of the Community is a member of Intersection for the Arts, which allows us to offer you a tax deduction for your contributions. Please go to georgecoster.com and click on the donate link to make a donation to help us provide future shows just like this one. While you're on our website, you can enjoy our archived past shows, which feature community voices working on solutions to critical issues facing Northern California communities. And you can sign up for our newsletter to find out more about future shows, as well as shows and events from the organizations that are included in our episodes. Take us along on your next COVID walk by subscribing to Voices of the Community on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at George Coster, and we'd love to hear from you with feedback and show ideas, so send us an email to george@georgecoster.com. I'm George Coster in San Francisco, and thank you for listening.